The Chinese Communist state, led by modern-day Emperor Xi Jinping, has a whole list of problems. Authoritarian control, a surveillance state, and human rights abuses that we're all well aware of. Despite all of this, their quality of life and growth on the world stage is nothing other than incredible. Because when we compare it to what's happening right now in Canada, some might say that the Chinese system is actually better. And that is because of this one thing, having a national goal. Let me preface this video by saying that I do not support communism, quite the opposite. I think that communism is actually the stupidest ideology that any modern nation can have. I also do not support any type of government outreach, and I do not support any violation of any individual's God-given rights by any bureaucrat or authoritarian. With all of that being said, I want to compare with you the outcomes of Chinese communism on the Chinese people with the outcomes of Canadian democracy with Canadians like you and I today. So let's start with Canada. A country with over 41 million people, the world's second largest landmass, a menu of resources that any country would dream of having. I'm talking unlimited fresh water, oil, gas, minerals, gold, iron, trees. It's a country with a traditionally left-leaning population, although that's about to change, and a country that has been leaning more so towards socialism in the past 30 odd years, and especially in the past 10-ish years under this guy. Canada is also a country with allegedly Western freedoms, not towards truckers. Canada is a country with a strong sense of liberty, not towards people who have a different opinion as to what happened in 2020. It's also a country with a fuck ton of taxes, which means unimaginable wealth being funneled straight to the government. You would assume that this country would have a rich and productive population, a government that has a nigh infinite budget to do whatever it wants to help better this nation. And you would assume a country with all of these resources, all this beauty, all this potential would have a population that is proud of it. But you'd be wrong, dead wrong. For example, Ontario is allegedly Canada's business center. But if it was part of the United States, it would be one of the poorest and least productive states in the Union. Canada as a whole is as productive as the state of Alabama. Now, I could talk all day about what's wrong with Canada, the hyper-left culture, the taxes, the infrastructure, the absolute violation of our rights by the Trudeau government, whatever. All of these problems that we're experiencing in Canada, all of the problems that you're experiencing in your life as a result of living in this country can all be boiled down to this. Canada as a nation lacks a national goal and objective. For all of Canada's wealth, freedoms, and potential, you would expect some type of goal or unified vision that unites everyone in Canada and all of Canada's resources towards meeting that objective. But there's nothing. Canada's current actual objective is just to exist. People in Trudeau's government might say that Canada's objective right now is to combat climate change. But we would correctly ask how, and they would say through taxes. Well, actually, they would blame Canadians for causing climate change like Mark Holland. Bit of a side note, why should Canadians pay for taxes even though Canada is responsible for only 1% of global greenhouse gas emissions? Now, on the other side of the planet, the Middle Kingdom, which is what the Chinese call themselves, Zhongguo or Zhongguoren, has a whole menu of resources as well. They have land, coal, iron, minerals, people, gas. They also have a brutal regime that can essentially do whatever it wants. Like, for example, mega Chinese billionaire Jack Ma, who's essentially like the Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos of China, didn't even directly say, alluded that there might be some problems in the Chinese government, and they disappeared him, only for him to somehow service in a classroom somewhere in the country, teaching kids about how it's very important to listen to the state. The Middle Kingdom is also world famous for its use of a social credit system that is just an earshot away from an absolute dystopia that would make George Orwell think that 1984 was just a picnic. But for all of these violations of liberty and absolute authoritarianism, China boasts an economy that will rival the United States. Mega cities like Shanghai are genuinely one of the world's greatest wonders. I mean, look at the absolute feats of Chinese civilization. It's absolutely incredible. And I guarantee that their ancestors are looking down on them with pride. The infrastructure in China is at least 20 to 40 years ahead of anything in Canada. If China wants a mega highway to be built to increase economic efficiency and productivity, they'll build it in literally no time. Like, for example, their 24-kilometer long Shenzhen-Zhongshan highway, which took only 7 years to build. And it was not an easy build. They had to cut through islands, mountains, and river systems, but it only took 7 years to build. This one highway, by the way, helped cut travel time between the two cities of Zhongshan and Shenzhen, which was previously 2 hours, into just 20 minutes. Whereas here in Canada, Yonge and Eglinton is still being built over 12 years later, which is absolutely embarrassing when it's compared to what's happening in China. China even created unimaginable wealth for its people. Chinese investment is accelerating throughout the world. And if you live in Vancouver or Toronto, you can easily see small snippets of this wealth by seeing the money that recent Chinese immigrants are bringing into this country. And all of this success, all of this infrastructure, all this civilization is thanks to this one thing: China's national goal of being number one. I used to play a video game called PUBG, where sometimes me and my friends would try to play on East Asian servers. And whenever we were playing with Chinese players, I would try to piss them off by saying 中国不是第一, which basically means China is not number one. Because in every game that they would be playing, they would famously say China number one. This one national goal of being number one is so hard-coded within their collective consciousness that it even bled into their video game culture. This national goal of being the greatest country in the world, economically speaking, means that they're able to unify a population of 1 billion people, justify government spending on massive infrastructure projects, and most importantly of all, to have a reason to exist and thrive in this world today. A national goal is very much like your own personal goal. Once you find that life goal, it will give you meaning in your existence. It'll give you meaning in your day-to-day life. It'll allow you the strength and clarity to realize what is bullshit and what is productive to help you reach that national goal. To help you reach that life goal. Canada has no national goal. So because of this lack, Canada grasps at straws to try to justify its existence. Like, for example, the Canadian government likes to use climate change as a national goal, or fighting racism, and other abstract concepts, which are almost impossible to eradicate or actually bring change. China literally had communism, but since this national goal of being number one was so important to them, and also thanks to Deng Xiaoping, who's one of their greatest leaders and one of humanity's greatest politicians, they were able to set aside or limit their communistic structures, open up their markets, and become even more capitalistic than Canada and the United States. This essentially allowed China to completely dwarf Canada in every single metric you can imagine. Their people's quality of life, quality of healthcare, and quality of education is magnitudes better than what we have here in Canada. Do they have human rights abuses? Absolutely. Do they have a brutal dictatorship that is centered around one man? Very much so, yes. But does their government mismanage resources to the point of missing their national potential like Canada? Not at all. Canada should be one of the richest countries in history. We have everything that any country would require, except for a national goal. And because of this lack, because of this objective, we're at risk of entering third world status in the next 50 years. So no, communism is not good. But yes, China's system is actually better than Canada's current system. And you can clearly see that with any economic or productivity metric that is being measured by any developed country. And all of this ties to that national goal. What do you think Canada's national goal should be? Countries are very much like people. When people are lost and they do not know what to do in their lives, they try to grasp at things to try to give them meaning. But many times these things that they grasp at don't actually give them that step forward towards reaching their true potential. That's why a national goal, as well as a personal life goal, is key for anybody who wants to be anybody, or for any country who wants to be anything that it could be.